The interstellar transit concourse of Halcyon Station never truly slept. Light from distant stars filtered through the transparent alloy ceiling, casting slow-moving constellations across the polished floor. Dozens of species waited in tense coexistence: armored soldiers, robed diplomats, traders with shifting skins and glowing eyes. The unspoken hierarchy of the galaxy was visible even without words. The strong stood where they wished, the weak made space. When the Dragon Warrior entered the concourse, that hierarchy snapped into sharp focus. He was massive, easily twice the height of an average human, his scaled hide the deep iron red of dried blood. Plates of battle-worn armor clung to his frame, etched with sigils that marked confirmed kills and conquered worlds. Heat seemed to ripple faintly around him, as if his body rejected the station's carefully regulated climate. Conversations faltered. Creatures who moments before had been arguing over seating quietly shifted away. No one questioned why he remained standing. No one would dare imply that he should sit. Across the waiting area, a human boy watched him approach. He sat near the edge of the concourse, one leg extended slightly forward in a way that suggested discomfort rather than relaxation. The limb was mechanical, clean, functional, but unmistakably artificial. Its matte surface caught the starlight differently than flesh would have. The boy's hands rested calmly on his knees, fingers still, posture controlled. He could not have been more than 16, his frame slim, shoulders narrow beneath a plain civilian jacket. The galaxy rarely noticed humans unless they were wearing uniforms or carrying weapons. This boy wore neither. As the Dragon Warrior stopped several paces away, the last available seats around him mysteriously became occupied by creatures suddenly engrossed in their own space. The warrior's golden eyes swept the area, unreadable. He did not demand a seat. He had never needed to. Strength had always provided what courtesy never would. The boy noticed the way the dragon's weight shifted, subtly favoring one clawed foot. Even warriors grew tired, he thought, especially those who had carried war for most of their lives. He inhaled slowly, feeling the familiar ache travel up from the interface point of his prosthetic leg. Standing would hurt. He knew that before he moved. Pain was a constant companion, predictable and honest. Fear, on the other hand, was optional. The boy placed his hands on the armrests and rose. The sound of his movement was soft, but in the tense silence of the concourse it landed like a dropped object. A few heads turned. Someone hissed a warning in a language he didn't understand. He ignored it and took a careful step forward, stabilizing himself before fully straightening. "Sir," he said, his voice steady and clear, carrying just far enough. "You can take my seat." The words hung in the air, fragile and defiant all at once. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Some stared in open disbelief. Others recoiled, as if violence were inevitable now, as if the boy had just signed his own death warrant. Offering anything to a dragon warrior, especially from a position of weakness, was unheard of. To some cultures it was an insult, to others a challenge. The dragon warrior turned his head. His gaze locked onto the boy, and for a moment the size difference felt absurd. The warrior could have crushed him without effort. One careless movement, one flare of temper, and the boy would be gone. The warrior's presence pressed down like gravity itself, heavy with unspoken threat. The boy did not look away. Up close, the dragon warrior could see the faint tremor in the boy's leg, the minute adjustments he made to stay balanced. He could smell the sterile tang of machine components beneath human scent. Weak. Damaged. By every law the warrior had lived by, the boy was lesser. And yet he stood. "Why?" the warrior asked at last. It was a single word, rough-edged, spoken in galactic standard with the accent of worlds broken by conquest. It was not shouted. It did not need to be. The boy swallowed once, then answered honestly. "Because you've been standing. And I can stand for a while." A murmur spread through the onlookers. The answer was not what they expected. No apology. No flattery. Just a statement of fact and choice. The dragon warrior studied him in silence. Centuries of battle had taught him to read intent, to smell fear, to recognize deception. He found none of those things now. The boy was afraid, yes, but fear did not rule him. There was something else there. Resolve, quiet and unyielding. In the warrior's culture, respect was taken by force. Mercy was a weakness exploited. The strong ruled because they could. Yet here was a creature who had nothing to gain, nothing to prove, offering courtesy without submission. The concourse seemed to hold its breath. The boy kept his stance, though the ache in his leg had sharpened to a steady burn. He did not know what would happen next. He only knew that sitting back down would mean something worse than pain, regret. The dragon warrior took a slow step closer. Security drones hummed to life along the ceiling, their targeting optics shifting nervously. A few beings edged backward, preparing to flee. The boy felt the heat radiating from the warrior now, felt how small he truly was in comparison. Then the warrior stopped. For the first time since entering the concourse, he hesitated, not from uncertainty of power, but from uncertainty of meaning. He looked at the empty seat, then back at the boy who had given it up. Something ancient and unsettled stirred behind his eyes. The moment stretched, fragile and electric, balanced on a choice no one else could make. Whatever happened next would not belong to routine or protocol. It would be remembered. And across Halcyon Station, everyone knew they were about to witness something the galaxy was not prepared for. The dragon warrior did not take the seat. He remained where he was, towering over the boy, his silence stretching long enough to become uncomfortable. Around them, the concourse slowly remembered how to breathe, though no one spoke. Every eye was fixed on the unlikely pair, waiting for violence or ridicule or dismissal, anything that would restore the familiar order of strength and submission. Inside the warrior's mind, old instincts clashed. He had been taught since hatching that the universe was simple. Power decided worth. Those who could not stand were meant to kneel, and those who could not fight were meant to serve or vanish. Mercy was a luxury that bred rebellion. Respect was seized, never offered. The boy before him violated every rule without ever raising his voice. The warrior studied the tremor in the mechanical limb, the faint tightening around the boy's eyes as pain demanded attention, and was denied it. This was not defiance in the way warriors understood defiance. There was no challenge here, no attempt to provoke dominance. The offer had been genuine. Worse, it had been chosen. "You are injured," the warrior said, more statement than question. "Yes," the boy replied. "And yet you stand." "Yes." The simplicity of the exchange unsettled him more than insults ever had. On conquered worlds, civilians begged, lied, cursed, or fled. None had ever looked at him like this, not as a god, not as a monster, but as another being occupying space. "You expect favor?" the warrior asked. The boy shook his head. "No." "Reward?" "No, sir." The word sir carried no fear, no submission beyond basic courtesy. It was given freely, not extracted. A flicker of something unfamiliar crossed the warrior's thoughts. In battle, hesitation meant death. Here it meant something else, evaluation. He found himself recalling long marches across burning continents, moments when younger warriors had collapsed under the weight of armor and expectation. None had offered anything when they fell. They were discarded, left behind to preserve momentum. This human would have been left behind in his armies. Broken. Useless. And yet the human stood. The surrounding crowd shifted as seconds passed without bloodshed. Some aliens leaned closer, curiosity overcoming fear. Others whispered urgently, interpreting the silence as a drawn blade that had not yet fallen. Security drones hovered, awaiting a command that did not come. "Sit," the warrior finally said. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the concourse. The word could have been an order, a test, or a trap. The boy hesitated, then answered carefully. "I offered the seat to you." "I decline," the warrior said. "Sit anyway." The boy considered this. Sitting would ease the pain. Sitting would also undo the meaning of what he had done. He straightened instead, though the effort sent a brief flash of white through his vision. "With respect," he said, "I stood because I chose to." I can choose to remain standing. A murmur of disbelief rolled outward. To refuse a dragon warrior's directive, even politely, was unthinkable. The warrior's claws flexed once, scraping faintly against the floor. Several beings flinched, and then the warrior laughed. It was a low sound, rough and brief, like stone grinding against stone. It held no amusement, only recognition. He looked down at the boy as one might look at an unfamiliar weapon, simple in design, but unexpectedly effective. You humans are strange, he said. You break easily. The boy met his gaze. We do. Yet you continue. Yes. The warrior stepped back half a pace. The movement alone sent waves of relief through the watchers, though none dared relax completely. He glanced at the empty seat again, then at the boy's strained posture. In my people's history, he said slowly, only warriors offer their place. It is a gesture of respect between equals or rivals. I wasn't trying to be either, the boy said. I was just being polite. The word polite seemed to echo, alien and insufficient. The warrior tasted it, testing its weight. Politeness without fear. Respect without expectation. These were concepts his culture had burned out of itself generations ago. You could have remained seated, the warrior said. No one would have judged you. The boy exhaled softly. I would have. That answer landed harder than any accusation. The warrior realized then that the boy's strength did not point outward. It was not meant to intimidate or conquer. It was turned inward, enforcing standards even when no one else demanded them. The warrior felt something shift, deep and uncomfortable. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself, not onto the seat, but beside it. He did not kneel, yet he reduced the height difference enough that the boy no longer had to tilt his head upward to meet his gaze. Gasps swept through the concourse, like a sudden wind. You honor me, the warrior said. Without reason. The boy shook his head again. There was a reason. It just wasn't about power. The warrior held his gaze for a long moment, then straightened fully. He did not take the seat. Instead, he turned slightly, positioning himself beside the boy, sharing the burden of standing rather than accepting relief from it. The message was unmistakable. Whispers turned into stunned silence. The hierarchy everyone understood had cracked, just enough for something unfamiliar to show through. The transport's boarding signal chimed softly overhead, almost apologetic in tone. Neither the boy nor the warrior moved immediately. For that brief span of time, they stood together, one scarred by centuries of war, the other marked by loss he refused to let define him. Across Halcyon Station, observers sensed that this moment was not finished. Whatever followed would reach far beyond a single seat, carrying consequences the galaxy had not yet learned how to measure. The boarding signal pulsed again, brighter this time, and the concourse began to stir. Passengers formed uneven lines, careful to give the dragon warrior a wide berth. Yet he did not move with them. He remained beside the boy, his massive frame still, his attention fixed not on the departing transport but on the fragile human who continued to bear his own weight in silence. You endure pain, the warrior said at last. It was not an accusation. Yes, the boy replied. You could end it by sitting. Yes. Yet you do not.
No.
The exchange drew a thin, humorless curl to the warrior's mouth. In my kind, he said, those who choose pain without gain are called fools. The boy considered that. In mine, he said, we call them people who don't want to become someone they wouldn't respect. The words settled between them, dense and unavoidable. The warrior felt their weight press against old certainties. Pain had always been a currency in his life, spent for victory, survival, dominance. Pain without purpose was waste. And yet this human assigned it a value he did not recognize, one that had nothing to do with conquest. Around them, the crowd moved more slowly now, attention divided between departure schedules and the silent confrontation unfolding in plain sight. Security drones hovered, but did not advance. They, too, seemed uncertain of the rules. The warrior turned fully toward the boy. If I were cruel, he said, you would already be dead. I know, the boy answered. If I were kind, the warrior continued, I would command you to sit and accept your weakness. The boy met his gaze without flinching. That wouldn't be kindness. That would just be comfort. Something in the warrior's eyes shifted. He had been offered many comforts over centuries, spoils, territory, fear disguised as obedience. None had ever come from someone who had so little to give. What are you called? The warrior asked. The boy hesitated, then spoke his name. The warrior repeated it carefully, shaping the unfamiliar human sounds with deliberate precision. Naming, in his culture, was an act reserved for the worthy or the dead. A ripple of astonishment passed through those close enough to hear. And you? The boy asked after a moment's thought. The question drew several sharp breaths from the onlookers. To ask a dragon warrior his name without permission was an audacity bordering on madness. The warrior did not take offense. He considered the question, then answered. The exchange of names changed the space between them. It was no longer conqueror and civilian, threat and potential casualty. It was two individuals, standing in defiance of expectation for reasons neither fully understood. You gave me respect, the warrior said slowly, without knowing who I was. The boy shrugged faintly. You were there. That is not how respect works in this galaxy. Maybe that's why it keeps breaking, the boy replied. A low sound escaped the warrior's throat, not laughter this time, but something closer to acknowledgement. He straightened, drawing the attention of the entire concourse. When he spoke again, his voice carried farther, no longer meant for the boy alone. This human offered me his place, he said. Not because he feared me, not because he sought advantage, but because he chose to. Murmurs rippled outward. Some faces reflected confusion, others unease. A few something like awe. In my kind, the warrior continued, choice is a privilege of the strong. This one is not strong in body. Yet he chose anyway. He turned back to the boy. Among my people, that is the root of honor. Slowly, deliberately, the warrior bent one knee. It was not a full kneel of submission, but it was unmistakably a lowering of status, a gesture reserved for fallen champions and adversaries who had earned remembrance. The concourse erupted in stunned silence, shock cutting deeper than any shout. The boy's breath caught. You don't have to. I do, the warrior said quietly. For myself. He rose again, the movement fluid and controlled, then placed one clawed hand flat against his chest. I will not take your seat, he said. I will share your burden. The warrior stepped closer, aligning himself beside the boy so that their shoulders nearly touched. The height difference remained vast, but the posture was unmistakable. Solidarity, not dominance. This human stands, the warrior declared. So will I. The effect was immediate. Those nearest straightened unconsciously. A few others, emboldened or inspired, rose from their seats as well. The simple act spread through the concourse like a quiet contagion, unsettling and undeniable. The boarding call chimed a third time, final now. The warrior glanced toward the transport, then back at the boy. Our paths will diverge, he said. But this moment will not. The boy managed a small, tired smile. I didn't think it would. As the warrior finally turned to leave, he paused and spoke one last time, his voice lowered so only the boy could hear. You have reminded me, he said, that strength chosen is greater than strength imposed. He stepped away, his heavy stride carrying him toward the waiting transport. The crowd parted automatically, but this time it was not fear that moved them. It was reverence, confused and nascent, but real. The boy exhaled slowly as the warrior disappeared into the boarding corridor. His leg ached fiercely now, the effort finally demanding payment. He lowered himself back into the seat, muscles trembling, heart still racing. Around him, the concourse buzzed with restrained voices and stunned glances. Something had shifted, though no one could yet name it. And somewhere beyond Halcyon Station, consequences were already taking shape. The transport departed in a shimmer of light, its engines leaving behind a fading tremor in the station's hull. Life in the concourse resumed, but not as it had been before. Conversations were quieter now, edged with uncertainty, as if the galaxy's rules had briefly loosened their grip. The boy remained seated, breathing through the dull fire in his leg, watching strangers who now glanced at him with something approaching respect. He did not linger long. When the pain eased enough, he stood again and made his way toward the exit corridor, moving with practiced care. No one blocked his path. A few stepped aside deliberately, not out of fear, but recognition. He was not sure how to feel about that and decided he did not need to be sure. Above Halcyon Station, data packets raced outward faster than any ship. Recordings of the encounter spread across civilian networks, then into military archives and cultural forums. Different species argued over what they had witnessed. Some dismissed it as an anomaly, a warrior's momentary indulgence. Others recognized something more dangerous, a fracture in the old logic of power. The Dragon Warrior stood alone in the transport's observation bay, watching the station shrink into a distant constellation of lights. The boy's posture replayed in his mind, the strain, the refusal, the quiet insistence on choice. He had faced enemies who fought to the last breath, but none had unsettled him like a human who stood without expectation of victory. When the ship crossed into slipspace, the warrior activated a secure channel. The symbol of his people flared to life, sharp and ancient. "I bring report," he said to the unseen council. "Not of conquest, but of encounter." He spoke carefully, recounting the moment without embellishment. He described the human's injury, his offer, his refusal to submit. He described the choice to stand. When he finished, there was silence on the channel, heavy with disbelief. "Why does this matter?" a voice finally demanded. "Because he was weak," the warrior replied, "and he acted with honor without being commanded to do so." "That is meaningless." "It is unfamiliar," the warrior corrected, "and therefore dangerous." The channel closed without consensus, but the message had been sent. Among his kind, stories shaped generations. This one would not be forgotten. Back on the station, the boy boarded a smaller civilian shuttle. He took a seat near the window and rested his head lightly against the cool frame. Exhaustion settled over him, heavy but clean. He did not feel triumphant. He felt complete, as if he had acted in alignment with something older than fear. A fellow passenger, a minor official from a neutral species, hesitated before speaking. "You know," he said carefully, "that many will see you as brave." The boy considered this. "I don't think bravery has to be loud," he said. "Sometimes it just looks like standing when it would be easier not to." The official nodded, unsure how to respond. As the shuttle undocked, the boy watched Halcyon Station recede, unaware of how far the moment had already traveled. On distant worlds, young beings would hear the story and feel something shift. On battle-scarred planets, commanders would remember a human who redefined respect without firing a shot. In halls of power, old assumptions would be questioned, if only briefly. The Dragon Warrior felt it too, though he could not yet name it. A seed had been planted in soil long thought barren. He did not know what would grow from it, only that the galaxy would not remain unchanged. The boy closed his eyes as the stars stretched into luminous lines. He thought of nothing grand, only of the relief waiting at his destination, of rest, of the simple knowledge that he would make the same choice again, if given the chance. Across the vast distance between them, warrior and human carried the same quiet truth. Strength did not always roar. Sometimes it stood, shaking, imperfect, and unyielding, and in doing so, reminded the universe of what it had forgotten. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, that reminder had only just begun to echo.